Now, if the legalization were to take place without an excess tax, the supply would increase with a greater quantity as well as a lower price. This would be because it would be much more accessible to consumers and would be much cheaper to produce and consume. Then, if if an excess tax were to be placed, the demand would drop, the demand would drop, decreasing the quantity and bringing the price up much greater. Now, here we see a table which calculates and shows us the percentage change in consumption of marijuana due to legalization. Now, as we can see, these asked different groups of users if they would stop or continue to use marijuana if it were legalized. Overall, the male population seemed to have the greatest change overall, with them changing mostly, especially with the occasional users with over 10.8% and daily users with 21% claiming that they would stop using marijuana if it was legalized. We're not exactly sure as to why that is. However, these numbers are definitely taken account when considering legalizing and creating the market for the economy. So now we come to the final steps of our problem, which is finding a solution. Now, these aren't necessarily a solution to solve all the problems that come with legalizing marijuana. However, there are 3 steps that I find should be taken if recreational and medicinal marijuana are both legalized in the states. So firstly, we have advertising. Advertising is a very easy way for one to not only spread awareness of their product, but also to educate the public. It's not a very expensive form of educating the public while also getting your product name out in the open. Additionally, you can reach much larger audiences with it being seen in public. As I mentioned earlier, I pass over 3 dispensaries on my way to school, each with a giant billboard outside of their store advertising the product. Additionally, there are several locations, some on Colorado Boulevard, which is a very heavily traveled road in Colorado, mentioning the laws, and I find this is an extremely well form of advertisement because they seem to all be located quite closely to a dispensary. So not only does it inform you of the current laws of marijuana usage in the United States, but also will allow you to point you into the right direction if you are looking for that. I additionally think that it can help discourage younger audiences from starting that type of lifestyle before they are old enough. With advertisements seen here, it discourages younger audiences by showing them something that they could easily achieve, which is motivation, perseverance, and determination, and how the usage of marijuana can take that all away. Now, I think something that does need to change, however, is our different regulations on advertisement. As you can see, through conducting my research, I came across a specific website. Now, PennDenver seems to be a fairly secure server with most of my websites blocked. However, this is a very popular place to purchase and find dispensaries, as well as different news related to marijuana. Now, you can see that before accessing the website, you must do an age check, which states that you must be 18 years old to visit the site. However, upon further looking into this, I found that if you simply click the I am 18 plus button, it will take you directly to the site without having to do any sort of age verification.
Which you are 18 now.
Which I am now 18, so it is no longer
as of today
to do this. Additionally, I think that looking out for advertisements with false statements, such as this one here, which is obviously a joke. However, it can be taken quite seriously when the facts seem quite real. drug education. I find that the government does not invest enough money into drug education in schools. When I took drug education in my middle school, they mostly told us not to do it because it was bad. Now, this doesn't expose you to the different aspects of the drug as well as the different ways that it can alter your lifestyle. I think that we can invest more time and money into thinking smarter and teaching students instead of to saying no to people who are offering it, to teaching students to just not push other people to have illicit behavior. Additionally, I believe that we can relocate some of the the funding and profits that we receive from taxing marijuana into making this education better. And this can go for all drugs, not just marijuana. Now next is tax revenues. We should, and there currently is placed, a harmfulness tax, which is simply a tax that states that because the drug is harmful to health, the dispensaries are allowed to tax you a little bit extra, a little bit more money on your purchase. And I think this goes quite unnoticed because it does blend in quite easily with your other taxes that you are paying on this drug, and they should continue to use this on products such as marijuana. Additionally, as we can see in these two graphs here, there's quite a lot of revenue for the government. And while money isn't everything, it can definitely be reused back into society with, like I said earlier, going back into education and making education better for the future. As we can see here, with Colorado making well over $10 million in tax revenues, with marijuana only being legalized for about 2 to 3 years in this graph, and the numbers have only increased since then. Additionally, in Washington State, we can see that they're almost reaching $12 million, which is quite a large impact on their economy. More recently, we found that Colorado receives over $67 million from the taxes that are placed on recreational marijuana, and Washington receives over $580 million. This overall affects the federal economy, both with recreational and medicinal taxes, which gives the federal government over $5.8 billion in tax revenues. So now this leads us to ask, what's next? I believe that we have to continue to conduct research on both the health benefits and risks on medicinal and recreational marijuana, which people are continuing to do today. Additionally, we need to figure out how to make this beneficial for both the government as well as the people and make the experiences better for both parties involved. This also drives us to ask, what are other countries doing? Now, we know that there are several countries in Europe who have legalized marijuana, and we know that there are several who are fairly against the legalization of marijuana. However, we like to look at countries outside of Europe as well, such as Canada, who is currently pushing to legalize it on a federal level in order to allow the usage both recreationally and medicinally throughout the countries. They are looking specifically at the US and using us as an example as to why it would be beneficial to the Canadian economy. In addition to that, we can look at Australia, who is also pushing to make this legal on the federal level. This has allowed us, the United States, to step up on a larger front and have a much larger audience. We additionally can take this to our advantage and make sure that what we are doing, we can use it both as an experiment and as a way to show that we know not only what we are doing when dealing with the economy, but also how to make changes and react to different things. Now, the last question it brings us to is, what do we have to do? Now, we don't have to necessarily do anything. However, in my opinion, I do support the legalization of recreational marijuana. Now, not necessarily for my own usage, but I find that there are many more economic benefits than there are issues with the legalization of recreational marijuana. Now, overall, it continues to be a very touchy and controversial topic in today's society, with many states going both ways, as we saw on the map earlier in the presentation. However, I find that we will continue to work to find the solution that's best for both each state individually as well as the nation entirely. Are there any questions?
Yeah, when you were talking about the sources, specifically with respect to economic gains, and they being relatively positive in their evaluations, did you find that in those sources, much in the way of either estimating or trying to predict social costs in terms of health or insurance or whatever other, I think it came up recently that there's been a spike in traffic incidents based on usage. In the economic evaluations of those sources, did they take into account costs to social costs?
Right. Now, some of them definitely did. However, there were a lot that took the naive stance of that everyone who uses it will be using it correctly and safely. However, I did find a lot of sources that pointed to the health risks that came along with using recreational marijuana. And now the debate does become whether the health costs are worth the money, and this is actually a debate that's going on in a lot of states, which is preventing most states from legalizing the usage.
Could you go back to your tax revenue slide? I was just a little confused about the graphs and this other graphic over here. Can you explain, because this one up here looks at, these are monthly?
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. Do you know why Washington has 10 times the revenue that Colorado does?
So I believe that it's due to they have a much larger population that uses it and takes advantage of the usage and the legalization of recreational marijuana. However, it could also vary with just more people using the, or more people purchasing it on a more regular basis.
So they're charging about the same amount?
Well, if we go back,
Or do they have a higher excise tax on?
if we go back here, you can tell that they also do have a higher tax than in Colorado with the difference they charge much more, sorry?
So the price is relatively comparable. I wonder if you're going to do they tax it much more?
And that's a huge difference.
Oh, yeah.
It's an enormous difference
Right.
in revenues.
Maddie, would you go to your supply and demand slide? So, did you get a sense in your research, any sense of elasticity of demand with respect to that taxation? And we've seen how with smoking cessation campaigns, there is in fact much more elasticity than we thought. So as taxes go up, consumptions go down.
Right.
Did you uncover anything that would suggest similar relationship between taxation and use in the marijuana industry?
Yeah, so I did find that the demand is relatively elastic, which simply implies that if they increase the price even by the smallest amount due to taxation, the usage and the demand for that product will decrease by quite a lot. And I found that this can be also displayed kind of a little bit here on this graph with such a large decrease, because as you can see, while the supply shifts only a small amount, the demand shifts quite a lot. And this we can assume is due to the taxes and the demand being fairly elastic.
There's a small thing in there. So is that third one S sub 3? Is that
Yeah.
S sub 1?
Yeah, I believe that this is supposed to be
S
S
sub
sub 3. Yeah.
Could you go back to the slide that lists the percentages of how much, it was like 96% of people use it daily?
No, I think
It was,
that was of the people who use.
Yes, this is of the
66%
people who
of people
use.
Yes, oh, sorry, yes, of the,
yes.
of you.
Of use, not the tech population.
Right.
Yeah.
Good read.
66% of users. use
Right.
it.
Still, I think that's,
And I do believe that the most recent statistics claim that just over 10% of Colorado's population uses it daily or more than daily.
10%.
Did you go, there's a slide about change due to legalization, change in use.
66%, 10% would mean 6% of the population
Oops.
is using it.
Could you help me interpret this again? So
Yeah.
if you look at the daily users, there's this 21%. How do I interpret that 21%?
So they took a survey of a typical group of people with a wide variety. These are specifically daily users, so split into males and females who would change their opinion on marijuana if it were to be legalized. Now, 21.5% of the males who said that they used it daily claimed that they would stop the usage if it were to be legalized. Now, a lot of experts believe that this could be because there tends to be a small thrill that comes from doing something illegally, which is why some crimes seem to be so appealing to certain populations. However, as you can also tell, females claim that none of them would change that.
It seems, it's really odd. So you're saying that if you legalize marijuana, that 21% of male daily users would no longer use marijuana if it was legalized, versus, rather
And
than
actually-
increasing use versus legalization.
in every single category, usage would go down.
Correct.
With legalization, use goes down.
But these are current users, right? So it doesn't take into account somebody who would not be a user
Right.
who would choose
Now,
to
would-
use it.
But number
If
7
it
is
was
not
legal.
users. Number 7 is not
Right.
users.
Oh,
And they
okay.
don't use it either.
Right.
They don't even use it in their
Well, no,
houses.
I think this is the percentage of people who would then choose to use it.
Percentage of change. It's not up, it's down. is what you're
Yes.
saying for these.
So daily users, male daily users would increase their consumption by 21%,
They would decrease.
would decrease. Interesting.
That because it gets more expensive. You're saying because, I don't know, it seems like an odd result, doesn't it? I think about
Who conducted that study?
It's an author of a certain book. I'm not sure his name currently. However, he's a professor at, I believe, a university in Australia, and I pulled several other sources from his work, and so he seems to be extremely credential. He's the head of the economics department at his university, and has conducted several years of research on this topic.
And this was published
In a book,
in his book,
correct?
so it wasn't in a
Correct.
peer-reviewed scientific journal.
Would you go back to your age-related, the age slide of, did you have a slide that talked about age of use?
And
Or is that-
No, I don't think so.
It serves
So-
the industry.
Was there, one of the things we're hearing more and more about
what this
is that the detrimental effects of marijuana use among, and I'm going to focus on males here because we've talked about, the higher prevalence of use among males. Did you come across anything that talked about, sort of like Mr. Ellis was talking, health effects, social effects, and especially those regarding development, brain development among males? And the year I keep hearing, the age I keep hearing tossed around is 26. The male brain develops until age 26, and for those who are smoking marijuana during that time, it could have
Correct.
permanent effects. Did you see anything, any suggestion or implied impacts of that use among males?
I actually did not.
Okay.
While most of my research was specifically geared towards the effect of taxes and advertising on the population,
Mhm.
I didn't find very much, or nothing really came across my path that specifically related health risks to change in demand or quantity consumed.
Okay. Any other questions?
Nice job.
Thank you, Matt.